I stepped on the accelerator and whispered into the empty cab. What part of me will I never outrun? Hello, friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I pull on to the silent stretch of Highway 84 just past midnight, my cruiser's headlights slicing through a low fog that hugs the asphalt. The radio crackles once, a faint murmur of dispatch confirming I'm clear for the Ridgewood sector, then falls dead again, leaving nothing but the hum of the engine and my own breathing. I lean forward, hands tight on the wheel, feeling the weight of the night settle onto my shoulders like a soaked coat. Every patrol starts the same, but each one shapes me differently. Tonight, I'm already tense, nerves tuned to any twitch of movement beyond the tree line. Around mile marker 12, I spot the shotgun glow of a motion-activated street lamp flickering on the side of a deserted farm access road. The beam trembles as if uncertain whether to stay lit. I kill the engine and kill the headlights, letting darkness swallow the cruiser and step out into the cold dampness. Gravel crunches under my boots, echoing across the empty fields, and I catch the scent of earth and rot, the kind of smell that seeps into your clothes and won't wash out. I lift my flashlight and sweep the beam north, past a rusted fence, and toward an abandoned barn whose weathered boards creak in the wind. The last person I arrested out here said he liked to hide in places like this, thinking the darkness would protect him. I found him crouched behind a hay bale, desperate and clutching a stolen toolbox. Tonight, there's no sign of life. Stillness stretches until my skin itches and I can almost hear the barn daring me to step inside. I radio in a status check. All clear, moving on, but my words feel flimsy in the face of emptiness. I force myself back to the cruiser, sliding in and brushing mud off my pants. The engine's roar seems too loud now, like I've woken something. My heartbeat hammers so hard in my ears I'm sure it will crack a rib. I flick the radio on again and tap the mic. Static. No response. Dispatch must be slammed. With late-night calls, that's normal. But as I steer toward the next beat, I can't shake the feeling I'm trailing behind something I should have caught at the barn's threshold. By the time I reach Maplewood Circle, the streetlights feel more oppressive than comforting. Each orange halo casts long, thin shadows that reach for the manicured lawns. A blue Ford Taurus sits idle under one of those halos. Engine off, no headlights, just brake lights glowing faintly in the mist. I ease to a stop 50 feet down the road, kill the engine, and slip out again. My hand drops to the holster automatically, muscle memory sharper than thought. The Taurus's windows are tinted too dark to see inside. I approach from the passenger side, flashlight beam slicing the glass, and spot a crumpled fast food bag on the passenger floor, old, greasy, forgotten. Nothing else. No keys in the ignition, no engine noise, no footprints leading away. I crouch to peer beneath the car and catch the reflection of my flashlight in something metallic just under the undercarriage. A wallet, maybe, or a gun. My pulse kicks up. I nod into the mic. Possible suspicious vehicle, checking for occupant. Inhale, exhale. Flip the flashlight to mechanical pivot and roll on the beam. A glint of chrome. It's a cell phone, cracked like spiderweb glass, screen dead. I radio, no one here. Removing potential evidence. I slip on latex gloves and scoop the phone into an evidence bag. The act centers me. Routine procedure in the middle of the uncanny nothingness. Back in the cruiser, I drop the bag into the passenger seat and settle in, warily scanning the windows. The rain kicks up then, soft taps on the roof. It's nearly silent, no wipers clogging the glass, no radio chatter, just water. A tiny drumbeat marking time. My breath mists again, and I wipe it away with a sleeve. Midnight in Dormont Heights. Pretty homes, silent neighbors, lives paused until sunrise. But I know what happens to people in these streets once the sun goes down. Fear wakes up. The 911 call came through earlier. A stranded driver claiming someone jumped into his back seat on Interstate 70, a panicked voice crackling before cutting out. Dispatcher tried to call back, no answer. I was the nearest unit. I combed every mile, stopped every car, checked every rest stop restroom. Nothing. Now I wonder if I should revisit that phantom backseat rider. The thought gnaws at me. You can't fix unfinished business until you face it. I punch home into the GPS autopilot and watch it plot back to the precinct, but the curving roads feel foreign in headlights. I twist the volume knob on the radio. Static. Then faintly, the dispatcher's voice. Unit 47, do you copy? I clamp the mic, relief and irritation searing together. 47 here. My reply is clipped, skipping pleasantries. I mention the abandoned vehicle in my evidence bag, but halfway through the report, she's likely moved on. Something in her tone tells me there's another 911, maybe a pedestrian threatening suicide, or an alarm at the school. I'm due at the station in 20 minutes anyway. Maplewood merges into Evergreen Lane, and the street lamps end. Now it's just the headlights and the black velvet of night. I slow to 20, eyes peeled for movement on the roadside. Every deer crossing report that turned out phantom has me spooked. I scan the tree line. Bracken rustles where there should be nothing. I step down on the accelerator, the cruiser lunging forward. My knuckles whiten on the wheel. I pass the spot and look back in the rearview mirror. Nothing but the beam's receding glow. Then the headlights flicker wide. Someone's pulled onto the road behind me. The high beams burn through the rear view, making me flinch. No license plate illuminated, no tail lights, just that glare pressing in. For a moment, I'm sure it's the Taurus again, back for its phone, or the stranger from the barn. I weigh my options, slow down and let them pass, or pull over and identify the driver. Protocol says, don't leave your car unattended on a dark stretch. I switch on the overhead lights, door chime chattering, and apply the brakes. The engine roars loud as if shocked. I slow to a stop, foot poised on the brake, and hear the distant whisper of dispatch forget-me-nots over the airwaves. My heart's a hammer. I reach for the door handle, then remember my taser is on the passenger seat next to the evidence bag. I consider grabbing it, safety first, but I force myself to stay calm. The other car brakes too, squealing tires offering an urgent hiss, until its lights go out completely, leaving me alone in the tunnel of dark. The engine behind me idles, then accelerates away. I watch the empty road in the mirror, fingerprinted with that brief shine of headlights. When I dare to look forward, I'm already at the entrance to Ridgewood proper. Quiet homes, locked doors, families asleep, blissfully unaware of the night's currents. I tuck the phone bag under the seat and reach for the radio mic. Dispatch, 47. Cancel that last, all clear. Static. Then her voice, low and distant. Copy that. She moves on to the next call. No one will follow up on phantoms. I kill the cruiser and sit in perfect stillness. Cold seeps through the leather seat. My chest still heaves, I open the door and step into the hush. In the distance, a door clicks shut. A dog barks once, half-hearted. I grip the flashlight at my side and walk onto a neighbor's porch. Just routine check. The boards groan underfoot, and I remember why I chose nights. Clarity in darkness, purpose in patrol. But right now, clarity feels like a mirage, and purpose drifts with the fog. I finish my check and head back to the cruiser. As I climb in, I glance down at the evidence bag. The cracked phone looks back up at me, a silent witness to someone's panic. I wonder how many calls go unanswered out here. How many stories end mid-sentence. I pull back onto the road and head for home base. Lights off again, letting darkness claim me. Somewhere beyond this curve, there's another disturbance. Another alarm that won't ring. Another story waiting to bleed into the night. And if I don't answer, who will? The night presses in, reminding me I'm alone out here, and that feeling is the sharpest fear of all. I kill the engine and sit for a moment, the cruiser's interior collapsing into quiet. My breath clouds the windshield again. I check my watch, 2:17 a.m., and force my eyes back to the rearview mirror. A flicker of movement at the edge of the tree line makes me tense. I lean forward, hand drifting to my holster. But it's only a deer, its eyes reflecting the faint moonlight before it bounds away into the darkness. I let out a slow breath, more relief than I knew I needed, and slide out of the cruiser. I lock the door with a snap that echoes louder than expected in the still air. I'm supposed to be wrapping up, logs, paperwork, coffee if there's time, but something pulls me back toward the woods along Evergreen Lane. Maybe it's the deer. Maybe it's the unsettled feeling that's been hitching a ride in the pit of my stomach all shift. The mist has thickened, turning tree trunks into gray ghosts. I walk 50 yards off the asphalt, flashlight in hand. Every step careful on the soggy undergrowth. Layers of fallen leaves and broken twigs crunch softly. I replay the earlier call, a man screaming over the line about someone banging on his door at a closed convenience store near the interstate exit. He hung up before I could get an address. Dispatcher patched it through as a possible disturbance. I was just back then and found nothing but an empty parking lot and a lone newspaper dispenser, its glass smashed. No prints, no footprints in the mud, nothing. At the time, I chalked it up to prank calls or a drunk stumbling home. But now, the memory coils around my spine like an icy snake. Ahead, the beam catches a shattered strip of yellow caution tape tangled on a sapling. I crouch and brush it aside. No lettering, just the flimsy plastic fluttering in a breeze I cannot feel. There, the dull gleam of something on the ground. I bend and scoop up what looks like a name tag clipped to a denim pocket. H. Caldwell. The tag's metal is scratched, paint chipped away, and the pin bent as if ripped loose. I slip it into an evidence bag. The name doesn't register until I turn it over. Underneath is embossed Miller's Quick Stop. That's the store from the call. I radio dispatch, 47 to dispatch. Found an employee name tag, H. Caldwell, at the scene. Could be evidence of trespassing or worse. I wait, static. Then a faint click. Copy, 47. Advise if you locate the business address. I glance at my GPS. Miller's Quick Stop sits 3 miles east on Route 12. The road is flooded in spots from yesterday's thunderstorm. I'm due back at the station soon, but I can't ignore an active scene. I pocket the tag and head back to the cruiser, each step crunching amplified by the emptiness. 15 minutes later, I'm back on the highway, passing the sign that reads, "Welcome to Ridgewood Township." The neon convenience store sign flickers amber against an ink-black sky. I park under a malfunctioning streetlight and kill the engine. No one's around, no customers, no cars. just the low drone of an idling refrigerator compressor inside. The front windows are dark. The automatic lock clicks as I push on the door. It doesn't budge. I try again, locked. The smashed newspaper dispenser lies a few feet away, pages of yesterday's paper fluttering half-buried in muddy puddles. I shine the light across the parking lot. The asphalt is pierced by deep ruts filled with rainwater, perfect for hiding footprints. I slip on latex gloves and crouch beside the dispenser, brushing mud aside. Nothing new. A few leaves, a soda cap, but no boot prints. I stand and sweep my light over the store's rear wall, visible through a gap between two dumpsters. There, scratch marks on the painted brick, parallel and roughly 4 feet off the ground, like the fingers scraping for leverage. I kneel to inspect them, running a gloved hand over the chipped paint. The grooves are fresh. Whoever was here wanted in, and they knew Caldwell must be inside. I tell dispatch, 47, access appears forced at rear. Suspect may still be inside. Requesting backup. A drone of idle across static. Copy, ETA 2 units. I slip around to the back gate and find the padlock cut. Clean slice through steel. My heart rate accelerates as I unclasp the lock and swing the gate open. Behind it, the alley is narrower, the air fetid with garbage and stale beer. Rats scatter at my light. I advance slowly, hand on the taser this time, flashlight beam sweeping. The back door stands ajar, hinges rusted but still functional. It creaks as I ease it open, announcing my presence. Inside, the fluorescent bulbs flicker once, then fade into darkness. The aisles look undisturbed. Packs of gum and candy bars lined up in military formation. Coffee shelves dusted but untouched. Then the beam catches footprints in a thin layer of dust on the floor. A scuffed boot print leading toward the break room. I follow, the beam settling on a pool of liquid by the sink. Dark, still. I lean in. It's coffee, cold and congealed with something darker. A smear of red, crusted at one edge. Adrenaline coils, but I force myself to breathe evenly. The break room door is cracked. I rest my shoulder against the frame and lean forward, peeking inside. The room's small table lies overturned, chairs scattered. A single mug sits upright on the table, a jagged line of dried liquid around its rim. Next to it, a smear of footprints leads under the table. I step in, careful not to disturb the scene. The pungent odor of stale coffee and something metallic makes me gag. I sweep my light across the walls. No Caldwell, no suspect. Just the hum of an old refrigerator. I edge around the table, hands tight on my flashlight and taser. Suddenly, a noise behind me, metal clattering against the sink. I whirl, beam slicing the darkness. A figure ducks out of sight, slipping behind the refrigerator. My pulse kicks up and I bark into the mic. Suspect in sight, corner of break room. Footsteps shuffle, metal feet against broken mat. I clear the table path and approach the fridge. Each football measured. Police, show your hands. No reply. I circle to the other side and hear a low, ragged breath. The figure is cramped, pressed against the wall. I step closer, taser raised, flashlight on their face. It's Caldwell, his security guard uniform covered in mud, eyes wide and wild. He lunges toward the door as I fire a taser probe. The darts sink into his shoulder. He cries out, spasms hitting the floor with a thud. I cuff him prone, heart hammering. He gasps, He was here, said he was the boss. I shake my head and check his pulse. Rapid, shallow. I radio. Suspect apprehended. Employee suffering shock. Send EMS. The static returns. Copy, 47, EMS en route. I drag Caldwell into the open air, the mist turning to fog as the fog lights hum to life in parked cruisers behind me. Officers flood the lot, flashlight strobes in the dim. Caldwell collapses into a chair, trembling. He repeats, he had a badge, said he was backup. The words echo in my mind like a challenge. Who would impersonate an officer here, and why? I stand in the parking lot, rain dots on my brim, and stare at the darkened windows of Miller's Quick Stop. A silent alarm, a broken padlock, a frightened man in uniform, and no clear motive. The night has layers, each incident another crease in the darkness. I know full well I'm not done. Another shift awaits, another story demands its turn. I holster my taser, reach for the radio to call in my report, but pause. A flicker from the overhead neon sign, 2 letters go dark at once, leaving only Lear's Kick SP. In that instant, it feels like the building itself is breathing, inhaling the night's secrets. I force myself to press it down on the mic. Dispatch 47, situation contained. Processing evidence, will update. And as the rain taps a rhythm on the asphalt, I realize the night doesn't end. It just gathers more darkness, waiting for someone to shine a light again. I park under the garish fluorescent lights of the precinct's front bays, the cruiser's engines ticking as they cool. The air smells of gasoline and burnt coffee, something that feels like home at this ungodly hour. I haul Caldwell's name tag and the cracked phone out of the cruiser, load the evidence into the processing locker, and punch in the shift log. My fingers tremble on the keyboard. The words forced entry, employee detainment, impersonation blur together until they feel meaningless. I lean back and let my head rest against the vinyl seat, listening to the hum of the fluorescent bulbs overhead. They usher Caldwell to the holding cell down the corridor. Reeves is there. Detective Reeves, hawk eyes and crisp uniform. She meets my gaze and tilts her chin. No words are exchanged, but I sense approval in the slight lift of her eyebrow. She is methodical. She pieces things together while I chase shadows. Still, I'm grateful she's on this. I nod and head to the evidence locker to secure my findings, noting in the log that Caldwell claimed a bogus backup officer had tried to intervene. Badge flashed, voice low and urgent. There's no record of another unit in the area at that time. I finally drag myself to the admin office, where cups of stale coffee line the counter. I pour one and let the scalding liquid burn my tongue. It's a ritual, punishment, maybe penance. The assistant SAO's report on Michael Carril sits on the desk. My arrest had put him at county lockup for 2 nights before his alibi cleared. Security footage, credit card receipts, witnesses. I crumple the memo, toss it into the recycling bin, and wonder how many other cases I've bungled. Every accolade I ever got feels like barbs in my back. My radio crackles. Unit 47, priority call. Suspicious activity at Crestmont Cinema. Unknown parties seen after hours. The clock blinks 3:02 a.m. The cinema closed 2 hours ago. I straighten, finish the coffee in one gulp, and head out. In the lot, the marquee above the ticket booth flickers. Now, showing The Last Prayer. The letters blink inconsistently, as if someone changed the bulbs to spell a disjointed message. I lock the precinct doors behind me and sprint to the cruiser. The drive to Crestmont is brief. Merrill Road, winding through empty strips of fast food joints and neon gas stations long shuttered. Halfway there, the rain returns. A steady drizzle that taps on the windshield like anxious fingertips. I engage the wipers and feel a knot tighten in my chest. I hate cinemas at night. Their opulence looks hollow when you know the seats are empty and the screen goes dark. When I arrive, the lot lights are out. My flashlight beam bounces off the cracked asphalt, revealing puddles and algae. The main entrance doors are chained, padlock rusted. I lean in to inspect the glass. No cracks, no pried marks. Yet the chain sits on the ground, snapped. Whoever was here wanted access. I radio in. Dispatch 47 on scene. Theater gates breached. The reply is delayed. I assume they're busy. This shift will end soon, and no one wants to be here. I circle the building, every footstep echoing. A blinking exit sign hums above the side door. I place my hand on the metal handle. It's warm, like someone just touched it. I twist the knob, it turns. My flashlight enters the foyer, illuminating scattered flyers for films past. The concession stand is vandalized. Popcorn machine spilling stale kernels, a half-melted soda fountain. The air reeks of mold and spilled cola. I sweep my beam down the hall. Movie posters line the walls, their edges curled, images ghostly in the dim light. Then I hear a footstep, soft, deliberate, down in the projection room above. The stairwell door is ajar. I grip my holster and ascend, each step groaning. At the top, the projection booth door stands open. I step in, the projector's lone bulb glows, casting a pale rectangle across the far wall, yet the screen is blank. The controls sit untouched, film reels spinning slowly on their spindles, no operator in sight. I cross to the console and check the logbook. Last entry. April 12th, 1984. Maintenance check complete. That's yesterday, no timestamp for tonight. A whisper drifts from the dark corner, like fabric brushing against metal. My heart hammers. I sweep the beam to a stack of film canisters. One is open, the film partially unwound, its edges smudged with what looks like dirt. I lean in and see a red stain at the film's edge. Too rust-colored to be blood, yet too deliberate to be accidental. I drop my flashlight, it clatters. The beam swings as I catch it, illuminating a pair of boots at the threshold, caked in mud, toes pointing my way. I draw my pistol, voice steady though my hands shake. Police, come out with your hands up. Silence. The boots shuffle, then step back. I advance, careful, until I see the silhouette of a man, draped in a raincoat, badge glinting at his hip. My breath catches. The badge bears the seal of Huntington, but the nameplate reads D. Pierce. The air goes cold, I know that name. My pulse surges. This is the man who vanished from every record. The imposter. He tilts his head, voice low. You should have stayed out of this, officer. He lifts his hand, not to draw his weapon, but to push aside the projector's beam. The light falls on his face, proud, unrepentant. He steps into the glow, and I see eyes like chipped glass. Cold, reflective. Everything I believed about authority and trust fractures in that moment. I raise my pistol, but words catch in my throat. You're under arrest, David Pierce. He smiles, an expression empty of fear. You'll need more than that flimsy light and gun to hold me. Suddenly, the film canister at his feet unwinds further, the reel spinning on its own, projecting jagged frames of every crime scene he orchestrated. The broken doors, the rifled cabinets, Michael Carrill's frightened face, Caldwell's terror in the break room. The images flicker and stutter, each frame a condemnation. And when the projector bulb dies, the room goes dark. So dark, I can't see my own hand before my face. The last thing I hear is his voice whispering, just beyond the black, "The night listens, officer. It knows who holds the truth." Then silence, absolute and unending. I slide out of the cruiser and feel the night air close around me, cold and damp, as if it silently resents my intrusion. My flashlight cuts a narrow arc through the fog, illuminating droplets on the asphalt like tombstones in a cemetery of mist. I check my watch, 12:03 a.m. The station clock will read something like 003, But out here in the dark, time warps. Every minute stretches and contracts, bending toward dread. I tuck my hand around the grip of my service pistol, more reflex than conscious thought. The weight is reassurance and burden, both. Steel comfort in my palm, a reminder of the violence the badge can unleash. I step onto Ridgewood Avenue, boots crunching on gravel strewn by poorly maintained gutters. Streetlights sputter overhead, their orange glow flickering like dying embers. Only every third lamp holds against the dark. The houses stand silent sentinel, neat lawns swallowed by shadows. One by one, I approach each front door, shine my beam through mail slots, peer into living rooms frozen in domestic stillness. A framed family portrait, a child's toy left abandoned, the soft curve of a couch arm. I knock briefly on each door, 2 dull thumps, and wait for responses that never come. No dogs bark, no voices call back. Only the muted hum of distant highway traffic leaks through. I radio my status, my voice low. Unit 47, Ridgewood. Check complete. No signs of forced entry. Nothing about the night feels routine. There's an undercurrent of wrongness, like a song played an octave off. I retrace my steps toward the cruiser, the beam catching a glint beneath a hedgerow. A scrap of silver foil, a cigarette butt, an imprint where a body might have pressed against the low box hedge. I crouch and brush aside the leaves with gloved fingers, nothing but damp soil and torn tobacco. I bag the cigarette for evidence. Maybe it belongs to a teenager out past curfew, or maybe to a stranger marking territory. Either way, the action knits my nerves tighter. Back in the car, I stow the evidence in the console and rest my head against the steering wheel. The dashboard clock blinks. I close my eyes, tasting the humid air, hearing the blood roar in my ears. Weeks of these 12 to 6 a.m. shifts have carved lines into my face, hollowed my cheeks. And yet, tonight feels different, fresh. I grip the wheel, light up the radio, half hoping for dispatch to call out another assignment, to break the tension into manageable tasks. Instead, the radio sputters static. I toggle channels. Static. I fiddle with the volume. The only sounds are my breath and the slow drip of condensation from the window seal. I shut the radio down. For a moment, I am truly alone with the night. Nothing between me and its vast, roiling darkness. My mind drifts back to the call that kicked off this shift. A 911 hang-up from a private number at 11:47 p.m. The dispatcher tried to call back twice. No answer. The location ping placed it near the old Orville warehouse on Pine Street, the decaying skin of Huntington's once booming canning district. I punched in the coordinates at 11:45. Arrived at the abandoned brick slab at midnight. No lights, no motion alarms, only the wind sighing through broken windows. I circled the lot, no tire tracks fresh enough to mark that hour. No footprints in the overgrown grass. I radioed in false alarm and left, but pulled north along Maplewood afterward. I spotted the shadow of someone slipping behind the building. By the time I looped around, no one was there. Just a cigarette butt by the door and a discarded photo. Polaroid of kids at summer camp. Faces blurred by exposure. I retrieved the photo and bagged it. Who had called? Who had watched me arrive? No dispatcher question. Only more weight on my shoulders. I flip on the cruiser's headlights and pull away from Ridgewood Avenue toward Pine Street, following the warehouse's dim outline through the fog. My siren is off. I don't want to announce my presence. The road is slick with dew, and the tires hiss as I slow. I park 50 yards from the warehouse entrance, kill the engine, and step out once more. My footsteps echo too loud against the chain-link fence. I lift the flashlight overhead, sweep the beam along the fence until it catches on a length of twisted, Metal. Pried open, the gate stands half ajar. My heart thumps and I clamp the radio mic. Dispatch. Possible unauthorized entry at 100 Pine. Requesting backup and K9. No reply. Must be busy. Or maybe the radio has finally gone dead. I push the gate wider and enter through a gap in the high fence. The warehouse looms, gargoyle-like, its brick walls scarred by graffiti and vines. I hoist myself onto the loading dock, the wood planks groaning under my weight. The metal doors closed, fingerprints trace oil-dark paths near the handle. I run a gloved finger along the edge, a smudge of blood, not fresh, but not old either. The nerve end pain reminds me how alive I still am. I jolt and radio. Unit 47. Blood on door at loading bay. I'm proceeding with caution. The door yields to a firm kick. It crashes open, groaning on rusted hinges. Inside, darkness stretches into nothingness. My flashlight beam pierces part way, illuminating stacked pallets, metal barrels, and overhead pipes dripping condensation. The air smells of mildew and grease. I advance slowly, holster hand loose at my side, taser gripped in my other hand. Every sound, the drip of water, the scuff of my boots, multiplies. My light catches motion. A shadow flits across a warehouse wall. I swing the beam, hands trembling. Nothing but shifting plastic tarps and dust motes. Then, from deeper inside, I hear a faint whimper. Childlike, terrified. My pulse jolts. The whimper repeats, closer now, echoing off the rafters. Something small, crying. I hunch lower, muzzle of flashlight an extension of my will, guiding me toward the sound. I follow the noise down aisles of crates, each labeled fragile or storeroom, until I come to a door marked office. The whimper spills out beneath the door. I press my ear to the cold metal. A ragged, breathing, jittery sobs. With a deep breath, I unholster my pistol, flick the selector to stun. I kick the door open. Inside, a young woman, pale, trembling, cowers in the corner, arms wrapped around herself. Her blouse is stained and torn at the shoulder. Dried blood crusts at the hem. She looks up, eyes wide with panic. Relief and rage surge through me. I holster the taser, lower my pistol and crouch down. "It's okay, you're safe," I say, voice steady despite my racing heart. She says nothing, just stares as if I might vanish. I sweep the office, no sign of an assailant. I radio back, calmer now. "Dispatch, I have possible victim in custody. ETA backup." I unclip handcuffs, careful not to startle her, and gently help her to her feet. She trembles in my arms. Outside, sirens wail, faint but growing. Rescue, backup, end of this nightmare. But as I guide her toward the door, I glance back at the crates lining the shelves. One is ajar. Inside, a Polaroid. Faces blurred and familiar from the earlier shift's photo. My blood chills. Whoever called 911, whoever left that photo, was watching this office too. The victim stumbles forward, and I wrap an arm around her shoulders, shining my light ahead. I step off the warehouse dock into the damp night air, adrenaline still thrumming in my veins. The victim, her name tag reads Marisol, leans against my shoulder as I guide her toward the cruiser, headlights breaking the fog in twin columns of white. I settle her into the passenger seat, warm blankets draped over trembling shoulders. Her eyes remain wide, fixed on the dark bulk of the warehouse behind us. I glance back once before climbing in, the door clicking shut like a judge's gavel. As I fire up the engine, dispatch finally responds, "Unit 47, backup is en route with EMS. Stand by for CID." Relief washes over me in slow waves. I radio back, "Copy. Securing scene. Will debrief when able." My hands shake as I place the mic back. Marisol grips the blanket tighter, eyes fixed on the dashboard lights. I search for words, but all I find is the raw echo of her fear. The drive back to Ridgewood Station is a winding montage of hydroplaning tires and pulsing red and blue reflections on wet pavement. I keep one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly on Marisol's knee, professional comfort without words. She finally turns to me, voice trembling. "Thank you, officer. I thought he'd kill me." The sincerity in her voice cuts through the haze of my exhaustion. I force a calm tone. "You're safe now, that's what matters." But inside, questions churn. Who was he? The man Marisol fled? Or the same imposter who framed Michael and terrorized Caldwell? The patterns slip together like mismatched puzzle pieces in my mind. At the station, CID agents flood the lobby, cameras flashing as they document Gates, footprints, and Marisol's statements. Detective Reeves arrives, arms crossed, assessing every detail with cool precision. She nods at me, quiet acknowledgement, and then turns to Marisol with a gentle professionalism that only increases my respect for her. I slip into the break room, pour a strong coffee, and watch my reflection in the window. The steam from the mug swirls like smoke, and I notice how hollow my eyes look. I settle at a metal table, flip open my notebook, and start writing. May 24th, 1984, 11:15 hours. Possible kidnapping victim found at Miller's Quick Stop warehouse. Witness name, Marisol R. Victim statements, presence of male assailant, badge identification, warnings of backup officer. Evidence, name tag, Polaroid photos, blood on door, torn blouse. My pen moves in neat lines, each word a nail in the coffin of denial. Hours pass as the station awakens with sunrise shift officers taking over. The air grows warmer, day pretending the night never happened. I close the notebook, leave the coffee untouched, and head back to the evidence locker. Inside, the collection grows. Caldwell's broken name tag, Michael's confiscated toolbox, the cracked cell phone, the Polaroid from Pine Street, the photo from Orville Warehouse, and now Marisol's blouse and Polaroid. Each item a testament to someone's terror. Detective Reeves is there when I return. She holds 2 film canisters, unopened reels from the projection booth, labeled Show 11:47 p.m. and Reel 2 Unknown. She hands them to me. "These came from Crestmont Cinema," she says. "They're not movies." I feel my stomach knot as I take them. Let's see what secrets they hold. We retreat to the forensic lab, a cramped room of flickering fluorescent lights and humming equipment. Reeves loads the first reel onto a projector. The film whirs to life, projecting black and white images onto a blank wall. I lean forward, heart pounding. The frames show Crawford's convenience store. A man in a raincoat, backlit, face obscured, pocketing cash from the register. Next, Miller's Quick Stop. Identical footage of Caldwell frozen behind that overturned break room table. The camera angle shifts, catching my own reflection in the window as I stood there. My face flickers across the screen, eyes wide, gun drawn. I swallow hard. This isn't random surveillance. It's an orchestrated narrative, a perverse documentary of fear. The next reel clicks into place. The projector sputters, and the image changes. Michael Carril's face, anguished, framed in the gas station lights as I cuffed him. Then Marisol's flight from the office, her trembling form on Pine Street stumbling toward the camera's lens. The film cuts like a heartbeat, snap, snap, each frame a testament to moments I lived, moments I believed only I had witnessed. I turned to Reeves, voice raw. He's been filming us, staging every scene. She nods gravely, and editing it to implicate us, to control the narrative. I run a hand through my hair. Why? To break us? To expose our failures? The house lights flicker as the projector dies. The lab returns to sterile brightness, but nothing feels sterile anymore. We cross-reference the timestamps with dispatch logs and find missing entries. Calls never recorded, units never dispatched, calls that dropped out mid-transmission. Someone used the radio frequencies to mask movements and manipulate responses. The imposter wasn't just stealing badges, he hijacked the system. Reeves closes the case folder and looks at me. He's always one step ahead, choosing when and where to strike. He knows our protocols, our habits, and he's sharing control of the night with us. My throat tightens. The uniform feels heavier than ever. I leave the lab and step into the morning light, pale, indifferent, as though the sun mocks the horrors the night hid. Citizens on their way to work glance at me, sleepy-eyed. They trust me. I want to warn them. But what could I say? That the badge meant to protect them has been weaponized? That our trust in institution and uniform is a vulnerability he exploits? I walk back to my cruiser and notice the dash phone, unused, ringing silently. I pick up, static. Then a faint voice, low and measured. "Officer, you've seen the footage. You know the story, but do you know who's writing the next chapter?" The line goes dead. I grip the phone, heart hammering. The city awakens around me, unaware of the darkness lurking in plain sight. I realize I'm already in his narrative, another character in a film he's editing. The question isn't whether I can stop him, but whether I can survive long enough to tell the truth. And as I drive toward my next assignment, the dashboard lights casting twin shadows of doubt across my eyes, I know the night still has scenes left to stage, and I may be powerless to cut to black. I ease the cruiser onto Main Street as dawn's pale fingers pry the night open. My shoulders ache, every muscle heavy from hours of tense vigilance. The dashboard lights wink off, and I kill the engine, listening to the last hiccup of the ignition coil. I settle back into the seat, sliding the gear selector into park, and close my eyes for just a moment. Behind my lids shine images like haunted film. Marisol's wide, terror-stricken face, the projector's pale glow on Pierce's smug grin, the glint of twisted metal on the warehouse door. My watch reads 5:17, though my body clock refuses to reset. I unbuckle and step into the crisp morning air. The smell of rain-soaked pavement still clings, intermingling with exhaust and fresh coffee brewing in the diner across the street. I walk toward the precinct, each footstep deliberate, boots thudding against concrete that seems almost forgiving after the chaos of last night. I feel the weight of the holster on my hip, the reassuring bump of the radio clipped to my shoulder. Anchors in a storm I barely survived. Inside the lobby, shift change is underway. A fresh-faced officer enters, yawning and stretching, as if nothing extraordinary happened while I was hunting shadows. They glance at me, eyes widening when they take in the blood-splattered cuffs around Caldwell's cell and the folded evidence bags at my feet. I nod curtly, uttering no explanation. There's work to do and words have grown dangerous. Detective Reeves is already conferring with CID, papers spread across a table like battle plans. She catches my eye, her look a mixture of relief and gravity. I offer a tight-lipped half-smile, the best I can manage. I make my way to my desk amid teetering stacks of paperwork, incident reports, witness statements, chain of custody forms. I hear the hum of printers churning out transcripts, the click of keyboards, murmured telephone conversations. This is the official heartbeat of the department, mundane and vital. But I feel removed, like a soldier after battle, wounded but standing. I sit and begin typing the narrative of last night's raid. Unit 47 responded to report of unauthorized access at Pine Street Warehouse. My fingers hesitate at suspect unidentified. The blank line that follows gapes like an unspoken truth. Pierce will vanish again, leaving gaps in the record that no paperwork can fill. My phone buzzes in my pocket. Caller ID, unknown. I hold it for a moment, heart thudding. I consider ignoring it, but duty and dread propel me to answer. I press the icon. Silence. Then the faint click of a line being picked up, and a calm, familiar voice. "You did well last night, officer." It's Reeves. My chest relaxes. "CID is ready for your statement," she says. "They have Pierce in custody. We'll process his confession soon." Relief warps my features. Pierce, finally exposed, will account for his deceptions. Justice may yet prevail. Before I can respond, my radio bursts alive. Unit 23. Shots fired at Riverside Park. Multiple casualties. Need immediate assistance. The voice is frantic, desperate. My heart jackhammers. Riverside Park is 7 minutes east from here, if that. Without a word to Reeves, I grab my jacket and head for the door. She catches up, flashlight in hand. "This one's mine," I murmur, more to steady my trembling hand than to warn her away. She nods, respect and concern warring in her gaze. Outside, the sky is high and pale, clouds tinged pink and gold. Birds call as if mocking the urgency tearing through my veins. I slide into the cruiser, slap the siren button, and peel out onto Main Street. Tires spin, gravel sprays, and I accelerate toward a new nightmare. Already, emergency lights flicker in the distance. The radio crackles with panicked voices, reports of gunshots near the playground, calls for paramedics. I switch lanes, weaving past stunned commuters. I pound the steering wheel with one hand, grip the wheel with the other, my breath ragged. Arriving at the park, the scene is chaos. Yellow tape flutters around overturned picnic tables. A playground swing sways empty, and a crowd of frightened onlookers huddles near a broken fountain. Officers form a loose cordon, shielding medics as they kneel by the wounded. I jump out and rush to the nearest victim, a man lying face down on the asphalt path, blood pooling beneath him. A uniformed officer kneels beside me, glare sharp. "They say the shooter ran into the wooded trail," he hisses. "We lost visual." I nod, kneel to check the man's pulse, weak but present, and bark, "Get EMS over here now and clear a path to the exits." My mind reels. Fresh carnage. Another villain armed with bullet and malice, slipping away as smoke from the warehouse raid still lingers in my lungs. My radio volume spikes with chatter, but I switch to channel 2 and call, "All units, perimeter the park." Suspect fled east into the woods, no hesitation. Secure all exit routes, K9 to the north trailhead. My voice is calm but carries an undercurrent of steel. Command birthed by necessity. I stand, scan the tree line. Dewdrops on leaves glint like watchful eyes. A fresh breeze stirs branches. I feel it as a warning ripple. I holster my pistol, grip my flashlight or baton, whatever I need to see and defend in the gloom ahead. Then I sprint toward the mouth of the woods, boots thundering on grass slick with morning dew. The trail narrows, trees pressing in, their leaves whispering secrets I can't decipher. A sense of déjà vu washes over me. This is how it started last night. Light slicing darkness. A call that felt routine until the world tilted on its axis. Now it happens again under a sun that promises safety but delivers none. My radio crackles, but I ignore it, listening instead to the beat of my heart in my ears. Branches crack, leaves scuttle. I sway the beam, catching glimpses of movement. A sleeve flashing, a figure ducking behind a tree. I call, "Police, come out with your hands." Echoes return, but no footsteps. I push deeper into the woods, panic and purpose fused into each step. The darkness here is thicker, shadows pooling in hollows. I come to a fallen log bridge over a narrow creek and pause. My flashlight bounces across footprints in the mud, their fresh, booted prints leading upstream. I follow, careful to dampen my steps, reflex from months of hunts. The trail curves around a giant oak, and there, just ahead, a coyote darts across the path. I freeze, my breath hitches. The coyote stops, lifts its head, eyes glinting in the beam. It stares for one long moment, as if weighing whether I am predator or prey. Then it bolts into the underbrush. I exhale shakily and remind myself. Animals feel the change in air, the tremor of fear and power. I press on. Ahead, the footprints veer off the trail toward an old service road. Cries drift to me, distant and discordant, voices raised in shock or command. I pick up my pace, adrenaline sharpening my senses. I'm close. I can almost taste the threat's pulse in the damp air. Then, through the trees, I see movement. A figure in dark clothing, hunched by a fallen phone booth, pressing a corner of clothing to a wound. They look up, and I freeze. It's Marisol, her blouse stained where I helped her, her eyes wild and haunted. Before I can call out, she drops the fabric, revealing not blood, but something darker. Bruises shaped like fingertip rings, skin broken and raw. She grabs my arm, hard, desperate. "He's here," she whispers, voice trembling. "He said if I told, he'd come for you next." My world shrinks to her voice, the crush of her grip, the weight of warning. I scan behind her. Trees rustle, but I see nothing. My radio crackles with voices I cannot parse. My hand goes to my holster, but I hesitate, torn between chasing another suspect and protecting someone who thinks he might return. I look into her eyes, haunted, pleading, and know this night will never end. A branch snaps to our right. We whirl. The woods are silent again. The coyote's tracks weave away. I see no footprints except ours. The trail ahead is open, empty, waiting. I cock my head, straining to hear a footfall. The dawn's light filters through the canopy, but does not dispel the shadows pooling at the edges of sight. I turn back to Marisol, but she's gone. No footprints, no rustle, only the oppressive hush. My heart freezes. I reach into my pocket for my phone. No signal. I radio for backup, but only static answers. The forest presses in, sunbeams failing to warm the chill. A realization crashes through me. He is always here, moving unseen, scripting fear with each scene. And tonight he's not just watching. I think he's waiting for me. I stand alone on the service road, mouth dry, blood pounding in my ears. The sun has risen, painting the world in color and promise. Yet all I see is the dark seam where night still clings, where the real predator lurks beyond sight. I lift my flashlight, beam wavering but determined, and step forward. The woods swallow me, the day's brightness swallowed by the weight of dread. I don't know where this path leads, only that I have to walk it. Because if I don't, the badge I wear, once a symbol of safety, will become the shroud that hides the next scene he chooses to stage. And no one will know until it's too late. I eased the patrol car's throttle down the empty stretch of County Road 17, watching the dim glow of the dashboard gauges tremble in time with my heartbeat. It was 2:07 a.m. on March 3rd, nearly 3 years after I'd first heard of Project Ghost Lamp. Yet every midnight shift still felt new in its unforgiving quiet. My name is Deputy Marcus Hayes, 10 years on night duty in Lancaster County, Nebraska, and I'd learned long ago that the darkness never arrives all at once. Instead, It seeps in through the edges of peripheral vision, carried on the metallic taste of cold air and a creeping doubt that you're never truly alone. Tonight's call had come through as a routine suspicious vehicle report. A silver pickup parked diagonally across the deserted parking lot of an old feed mill just off Highway 6. The dispatcher gave me GPS coordinates and a brief note. No movement, no lights, no plates. I thumbed over my left shoulder and tapped back on the mic. Hayes copying. On approach. The cold cut through my uniform, but even bundled against the chill, I felt every degree as a sharpened nerve. I parked the cruiser 20 yards from the entrance, engaged the spotlights, and slid out. The beam from my flashlight swept across cracked concrete, abandoned pallets stacked like forgotten memories, and the sagging silhouette of the pickup leaning toward a shattered window. Gravel crunched under my boots. My gloved fingers brushed against the holster of my service weapon, a subconscious reflex driven by 30,000 miles of patrol. Everything felt wrongly still. As I crept toward the cab door, I keyed the mic again. Hayes to dispatch. ETA on backup? Static crackled. No response. My stomach tightened. I clicked the button again, waited 3 heartbeats. Nothing. Dispatch, do you copy? The only answer was the faint hiss of dead air static, as if the world had swallowed the frequency whole. My throat went dry. Ambulances and firefighters can handle wrecks and flames. Police handle the unknown. But silence. Silence was the hardest assignment. With a careful tilt of my flashlight, I inspected the driver's side. The door was locked. Reflecting on standard procedure, I tugged at the latch. Nothing. I holstered the weapon, clipped on my radio mic, and scanned for other access points. That's when I caught movement flickering behind the windshield. A thin leg shifting beneath a ragged denim, the foot sliding out of view. A hiss of breath caught in my lungs. Someone, or something, was inside. I drew my sidearm, switched the beam to my left hand, and braced my pistol arm against the truck's cold metal. The barrel's weight balanced the flashlight's weight, a familiar ritual. Lancaster 35 to dispatch. I have movement inside the vehicle. Request immediate backup. I found myself repeating the call 3 times before I acknowledged I was alone. The pickup's engine was still warm, fresh. Someone had been here minutes before. I signaled with my free hand for calm, inhaled slowly, and clicked off the safety. Approaching the passenger side, I tapped the window with the butt of my flashlight. Sheriff's office, please open the door. No response. Just the ambient hum of a stray car radio drifting from miles away, swallowed by the rustle of wind through dying cornstalks. My reflection in the glass stared back. Tight jaw, narrowed eyes beneath the brim of my patrol cap, breath fogging a small circle directly in front of me. I eased the window down an inch, enough to slip my gloved fingers into the jamb. The mechanism groaned in protest, then yielded. Heart hammering, I flipped the lock and pulled the door open. Darkness spilled into my face, and a breath of cold air rushed past. The flashlight beam flared across the interior. Upholstery worn thin, fast food wrappers crumpled under the seat, a half-empty coffee cup balanced on the center console. And then, the duffel bag. It lay on the floor behind the driver's seat, a dull green canvas stained with splatters of mud that looked eerily like dried blood. I clicked the light's focus tighter, sensing the weight of unseen eyes. My free hand hovered over my radio mic. I have a duffel bag in the back seat, standing by for backup. My voice sounded distant, hollow. Routine calls never sounded this tense. I slid behind the wheel, careful to avoid disturbing anything else, and angled the beam toward the bag's zipper. It was partially open, frayed edges and a crooked seam consistent with frantic handling. I knelt on the floorboard and drew the bag toward me. The air from inside smelled of damp fabric and something acrid, familiar in the back of every mortuary's prep room. Formaldehyde. My heart rate spiked. Flashbacks of the first ghost lamp case. Martin Ortiz's frozen stare in that trailer hammered at my skull. Just then, headlights swept across the lot. Backup. Relief surged so sharply my vision blurred. I twisted to spot two cruisers pulling in, their emergency lights painting the rusted siding in disorienting blues and reds. Sergeant Milton and Officer Castillo stepped out, weapons drawn, flashlights trained on me. "Hayes, step back," Milton ordered. I nodded, snapped off my light, and retreated outside the cab. Milton approached, his pulsing torch beam zeroed on the bag. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, voice tight. "You find a body?" I shook my head. Not yet. Together, we entered. Milton paused at the threshold. "Open it, Hayes." The sergeant's calm was a tether, but I could feel the old tremor in my fingers. I dropped to one knee and flipped the zipper. The bag's lip peeled aside, and my flashlight revealed the bright gleam of polished leather. There, folded atop stained sheets of plastic tarp, lay a pair of men's shoes, clean, scuffed only at the heels, followed by a gray wool overcoat. Beneath the coat, arm bound at the elbow by duct tape, so recent the adhesive still clung in strands. My stomach twisted. Milton's voice broke the hush. "Move it out." Castillo sprang forward, pulling the bag from my grasp and hefting it across the threshold. In the fluorescent wash of the backup cruiser's floodlight, we pored over the contents. A man's coat, a set of neatly folded clothes, and finally, when Castillo lifted the tarp, a body. Male, late 30s, face obscured by tape but eyes open, frozen mid-blink, staring back at us in accusation. The suit beneath his coat was crisp, immaculate, as if he'd just left a boardroom meeting. The frost on his eyelids glittered like shattered glass. Milton barked orders. "Secure the scene. Call for the coroner. No one touches anything." The lot felt impossibly small now, the feed mill looming like a tomb around us. I stood at the edge, radio dead in my hand. A gust of wind ripped across the fields, and the hushed moan it carried sounded almost human. My throat closed, because this wasn't the first, and it wouldn't be the last. The signature was unmistakable. Meticulous placement, careful cleaning of the suit, the chilling decision to leave him arranged in that duffel. As we waited for the tag team of crime scene techs and specialists, I felt the ache behind my ribs settle into something deeper. An old sorrow, a well-worn dread. I'd survived countless dangerous nights, chased countless ghosts. This one felt different, personal. The killer had struck again, but this time in my jurisdiction, in my county. The boundary between hunter and hunted felt dangerously thin. When the coroner's van finally rumbled in, I watched the body slide onto the stretcher. The cold night pressed close, and I could almost hear the whispers of those lost before him. I closed my eyes, drew a slow breath of icy air, and reminded myself why we keep going. Because if we stop, the darkness wins entirely. And out here, on roads like this, in nights like this, some of us have sworn to stand between ordinary people and the monsters waiting in the shadows. Even when those monsters know exactly how to wear our face. The coroner's light on his face was ghostly as they wheeled him away. I swallowed the lump in my throat and turned back to the feed mill, its shadowed rafters stretching overhead like skeletal arms. Officer Castillo was bagging evidence, jacket, clothing, the duffel itself, in numbered yellow markers. I knelt by the trailer hitch, watching frost form on the metal. My breath fogged the air, each exhale feeling as heavy as regret. I glanced at Milton, who was crouched beside me. His brow was furrowed. "You okay?" he asked quietly, voice low enough that only I could hear. I forced a nod, but my chest tightened. "I've seen this before," I admitted. 3 years ago, first Project Ghost Lamp case, I was the one who found Ortiz." Milton's gaze dipped toward the pickup's rear. "I remember," he said. That look in his eyes, like he knew he was already dead. I shivered, though the wind had died. It never stops haunting. We stood, and I rubbed my hands along my arms. Night had fallen deeper, the sky an ink-black smear dotted with distant stars. My cruiser's radio crackled, and I keyed the mic with a numb thumb. "Hayes to dispatch. Scene under control. Evidence secured. Coroner arrived." My words felt hollow in the empty lot, swallowed by the darkness. I thumbed the radio off and dropped it onto the cracked asphalt. Milton lit a cigarette, the ember glowing bright for a moment before he inhaled. He exhaled a plume of smoke that danced in the spotlight's glare. "You still with us, Hayes?" he asked, flicking ash. His tone wasn't mocking, just concerned. I blew out a breath of my own. "I don't know," I said. "Every time I think I've got a handle on him, he finds a new way to remind me he's out there." I nodded toward the dark fields beyond the lot. "Still playing God with people's lives." His jaw clenched. "We criminal justice types tend to like believing we're the ones in control. But there's your takeaway. Sometimes chaos wins." He flicked the cigarette butt, and I bent to crush it with my boot. The night felt suddenly claustrophobic, as though the space between each object had narrowed, closing in. I leaned against the mill wall, arms crossed, scanning the horizon. My cruiser's blue and red lights cast long, unnatural shadows that twitched like living things. A distant howl, maybe a coyote, split the hush, and I flinched. "You hearing that?" I asked. Milton shook his head, stepping back from the building. "Just the usual." But it didn't sound usual to me. It sounded hollow, as though echoing from a great distance. My skin prickled. "I'm going home after this," I murmured. "I need to clear my head." He nodded, but I knew he didn't really believe I'd sleep. I straightened, brushing gravel from my uniform pants, and kicked at a loose rock. It skittered across the lot. My flashlight lay inside the truck cab. I didn't feel like reopening that door. Instead, I fished in my coat pocket for hand warmers I'd shoved in before the shift. My fingers closed around the packet, empty. I cursed under my breath. Even the little comforts were stolen now. Milton approached, sliding his own warmers into my palms. "Here," he said. "Won't fix everything, but it's something." I offered a half smile. "Thanks." He clapped me on the shoulder, firm, brotherly. For a moment I felt anchored. This was more than a job. It was a pact. A promise never to let one another stand alone in nights like these. The coroner's van door slammed in the distance, followed by low voices. Evidence techs clicked cameras, measured distances, and marked chalk outlines around the duffel's imprint. My gaze drifted to the pickup's shattered window, the way it jutted into the air, an open wound in the vehicle's side. My mind reeled back to that ruined glass, and I remembered the first time I'd seen the look in a corpse's eyes. Ortiz's stare had cut through the storm like a blade. Brandt in the diner booth. Caldwell in the van. And now this man too, his suit immaculate, his eyes accusing, as though I had somehow failed to save him. I stepped toward the truck, drew a deep breath, and leaned in to peer through the broken window. The interior was a time capsule of carelessness and horror. Scattered trash mingled with the neat stack of clothing I'd pried from the bag. The steering wheel bore imprints of someone's frantic grip. A coffee-stained map of Nebraska lay unfolded on the floor. A series of routes scrawled in red ink that matched the freeze-dried stains on the duffel. I traced the lines with my fingertips numb from cold but jittering with adrenaline. The map led from Lincoln, northeast through Omaha, then northwest past Hastings, and back south to Clemens. An endless loop that crisscrossed my county like a predator marking territory. "Hayes," Milton murmured, and I blinked. He was beside me, his breath misting in the beam's glow. "Look." Following his gesture, I aimed my flashlight at the other seat. There, etched into the vinyl by a sharp object, was a symbol I hadn't seen before. A simple circle bisected by a vertical line, the two halves uneven, one side slightly larger. It was drawn with deliberate force, pressed deep enough that light caught the groove. I crouched to inspect it, heart hammering. "Never seen that in the file," I said. Milton knelt beside me. "Neither have I." His voice was low, reverent. We exchanged a look, the same realization dawning. This wasn't just a repeat of old crimes, it was evolving. The killer was sending a message, refining his signature. The circle and line spoke of division, imbalance, judgment lopsided, uneven. I swallowed hard. The map's roots, the symbol, the ritualized cleaning, the victim's professions, everything pointed to a twisted intellect, an artist who sculpted terror with clinical precision. A sudden gust rattled the mill's corrugated metal walls, and a loose panel groaned overhead. My hand snapped to my holster. "We should pull back," I said, voice taut. "Let CSI finish, then we roadblock every exit." Milton stood, straightening the brim of his cap. "Agreed, we box him in tonight." I radioed the SAT units. "All available units, code 3, lock down roads exiting this area." The order crackled through my headset, and I felt a spark of purpose amid the dread. We'd hunt this ghost lamp to its source, even if it led us to the darkest corners of Nebraska and beyond. As we moved to clear the perimeter, I took one last look at the broken pickup. The symbol etched in vinyl seemed to pulse in the light. I closed my eyes for a moment, picturing the killer, wearing our face, following our protocols, mocking our faith in law and order. He knew we were coming. He'd left us breadcrumbs, led us to this feed mill under the guise of a routine call. And soon, in the deep night, we'd be chasing a phantom through roads slick with frost, racing against a mind that thrived on silence, on our every misstep. The grain elevator's silhouette loomed at the edge of the lot, and I could almost hear the whisper of unseen watchers. My pulse steadied into a slow drumbeat. I planted my feet, squared my shoulders, and flicked the safety off my flashlight. The hunt was on, and the darkness was stirring. The wind had shifted, carrying a low, keening whistle through the fields as we fanned out along the gravel road that led away from the feed mill. My breath came in measured bursts, mist coiling and disappearing in the beam of my flashlight. Sergeant Milton motioned for me to follow him toward the east roadblock, where officers Castillo and Nguyen were setting out spike strips. The hush between us was charged, the only sound our boots crunching over frost-hardened pebbles. I replayed the symbol etched into the pickup's vinyl, circle bisected by a line, over and over in my mind. It felt like a taunt, an invitation to decipher the killer's code. But codes can be broken. Patterns can be unraveled. As we neared the first blockade, I swept my flashlight across the horizon. The road stretched in a straight line toward the dark silhouette of a corn silo 3 miles out, lit only by a faint halo of moonlight. Somewhere out there, the killer's tan Bronco lurked, engine ticking as it cooled. I almost missed the subtle shimmer in the fields, a flicker of headlights just beyond the tree line. Milton tapped his radio earpiece. "All units, stand by for pursuit. On my mark, we close in." His voice cut through the cold like a blade. I pressed myself against the back of his cruiser, reading his posture. Alert, controlled, every instinct primed. He keyed the mic. "Now." Immediately, Castillo and Nguyen jumped into their cruisers, sirens off, lights flashing red and blue. I sprinted to my own car, slammed the door, and fired the engine. The roar of the V8 echoed down the empty road as I peeled out, tires spitting gravel. The first blockade was a framed illusion. 3 orange cones behind the spike strip, shining in my headlights like lantern beacons. I eased over the spikes, careful not to flatten them completely, hoping our quarry would do the honors. Behind me, I heard tires bursting, a fierce ripping sound. I glanced in the rear view. Pieces of rubber flew past as Castillo's cruiser came barreling through, front tires shredded, shards of steel gleaming. His siren roared to life as he kept pace. Milton's SUV rolled up beside me, lights spinning. We were clustered like a diamond formation converging on a single point of threat. Ahead, beyond the second curve, the road narrowed between thick hedgerows. When I braked, shards of ice crackled under the pads. I waited, chest burning, until Castillo's voice crackled over the radio. "Broncos here. Northwest side of the silo." I flicked my beam upward, picking out the silo's cylindrical face against the night sky. At its base was the tan Bronco, parked awkwardly at an angle, front wheel turned inward. The driver's door stood open, and a lone figure, pale in the moonlight, moved toward the edge of the cornstalks. Milton nodded at me, and we rolled in low-speed convoy to flank the Bronco. I eased the cruiser into a soft arc that would cut off its retreat. My heart hammered against my ribs as I spotted the man slip behind the vehicle, ducking low, heavy fabric of a coat dragging in the dirt. He didn't see me until I clicked on the spotlight. The burst of brightness caught him between the eyes. He stumbled, pressed himself flat against the metal, and then bolted. "On foot!" I yelled, door bursting open before I registered. My boots sank into soft earth at the field's edge as I sprinted across the frozen mud. The stubble of corn stalks scraped against my legs, spines slitting through uniform fabric. I kept my flashlight aimed low, cutting a path in the darkness. Behind me, I heard Milton's boots pounding, Castillo's shouted directions, the metallic echo of a baton's lock snapping. The field opened into a shallow ravine, shadows pooling beneath the ridge. The figure darted across to the other side, vaulted over the fence, and disappeared among the trees. I skidded to a halt, flashlight dancing across trunks, broken branches, the sinister silhouette of a deer stand perched above. The ravine was littered with footprints, at least 2 distinct sets. The killer's long strides, and then a smaller shuffling print that I assumed belonged to his latest victim. My pulse thundered as I realized he'd dragged the body here before the call came in. Without thought, I radioed a hold pursuit, possible secondary victim in the field. The words echoed in my helmet, a sudden lurch of dread in my gut if that body was still alive, or worse, if he was torturing her now, hidden in the dark. The idea sent a jolt through me. We had to find her before it was too late. Milton grabbed my arm. "Hayes, focus. We secure the Bronco, then spread out in teams of 2. His grip was firm, grounding. I nodded, forcing breath into my belly. We backed away from the ravine's edge, handing off the flashlight to Castillo. I holstered my weapon, not wanting to risk an accidental discharge in low visibility. At the Bronco, Nguyen and Castillo cuffed the driver's door closed. I lifted the VIN plate, altered, filed down at the edges. The taunt was clear. He'd known we'd track him here, yet still left us just enough to catch up. "Area search. Grid formation," Milton ordered. We split into pairs, me with Nguyen, Milton with Castillo. We fanned out into the cornfield, heads swiveling, lights sweeping. The stubble whispered as we passed, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. I forced my legs forward, every muscle burning, flashlight beam quivering. A sudden snap to my left, a broken stalk bent in half. My heart stuttered. I tightened my grip on the radio mic, fingers white-knuckled. We ducked beneath the ravine's lip, and there, half hidden by a clump of weeds, lay a woman's silhouette, curled around a duffel bag, her coat caked in mud. My breath caught, sweat coated my back despite the cold. I knelt beside her, shining light on, a face clenched in shock, eyes watering but alive. She gasped, pressing a hand to her side, moaning. I dropped my radio, unholstered my flashlight, and switched it to low beam. "Ma'am, I'm Deputy Hayes. You're safe now. We're going to get you out." Her eyes met mine, wide, accusing, terrified. He said I'd understand why. He said... Her voice trailed off with a tremor. I felt nausea rise. She was younger than the others, barely mid-20s. A consultant or intern maybe, caught in his pattern of targeting professionals. I grabbed my radio mic. "Dispatch, this is Hayes. Found possible survivor in the ravine. Need medical and crime scene tech ASAP." The response was a crackle, promises of en route. I turned back to her, scanning for injuries. No obvious bleeding, but her agitation was clear. As I radioed, I spotted it, carved into the nearby fence post. The same circle and line symbol, deeper and smeared with sap. Something about its fluidity suggested it had been drawn by hand, eager, almost furious. My breath stalled. This wasn't just a calling card, it was a confession etched in wood. The victim's gaze followed mine. "He wants me to see it," she whispered, voice low. I stiffened. "Stay here," I instructed, gently guiding her hand away from the symbol. She nodded, unable to speak, and I moved closer to the marking. My flashlight cut across its edges, revealing fine grooves where the blade had cut. I reached for my gloves, worthless now, but a ritual to protect evidence. As I slid them on, I noticed dark streaks along the symbol's lower half, fresh, sticky blood that hadn't yet clotted. My stomach turned. The killer had been here not long ago. "Hayes," Nguyen hissed. She emerged from the rows beside me, breath ragged. Her beam settled on the symbol. She swallowed, voice barely above a whisper. "He's taunting us. He knows we'll find this." My mind raced. A plant, a trap, a lure meant to draw us deeper into his hunting ground. I straightened, shining light back to the survivor. She clutched her coat tighter, unaware of the trap she might have led us into by screaming for help. I turned back to the fence post. The blood glistened in my beam, dark and accusing. "We document," I said, voice low. "Then we move everyone back to the roadblock." The logic was simple. Consolidate, avoid further ambushes, secure the perimeter. But another thought gnawed at me. All this effort to rescue one life. A chance to atone for those we hadn't saved before. The weight of every victim pressed on me, urging me forward. I drew my camera, swept the scene in meticulous frames. The symbol, the blood, the nearest footprints leading away toward the broken shed on the ravine's far side. Each click of the shutter felt like a heartbeat in the night. When I finished, I tore my gaze away, back to the ravine's edge. I scanned the tree line where the killer had fled. Moonlight filtered through skeletal branches, painting ghostly patterns on the frozen ground. I could almost hear the rustle of his coat as he ran, feel the darkness gathering in the hollows of those trees. "Ready?" Milton's voice came over my shoulder. He held the survivor's hand, guiding her out. She nodded weakly, leaning on him. I extinguished my light, holstered the camera, and turned to lead the team back through the cornfield. The symbol's imprint remained behind us, etched into wood, blood still fresh, a silent promise that our work was far from over. As we filed out, I cast one last glance at the ravine, at the broken shed with its doors ajar, the half-burned barrel beside it, the footprints trailing toward the unknown. My throat tightened. The field fell silent once more, but I could feel the killer's gaze following us, lingering in the stubble, marking our retreat. He'd wanted us here, wanted us to see his craftsmanship, his message, his triumph. We emerged onto the gravel road under the wavering glow of headlights. Officers surrounded us, flashlights sweeping the edges of the cornfields as medics rushed in to tend to the survivor. I sank against the cruiser's hood, hands shaking despite the warming hand warmers in my pockets. Milton crouched beside me, offering quiet solidarity. The night had delivered a life back to us, but it had also shown just how close the darkness could come, how easily it could swallow a soul whole. Above us, the moon hung like a silent witness, casting its pale light over the scene. I exhaled slowly, feeling the breath come out in a fine mist that drifted away. In that moment, I realized the hunt had entered a new phase. We'd saved someone tonight, broken the pattern he'd laid out, but we'd also been shown how cunning he'd become, how adept at turning our strength into his advantage. My radio crackled again. "Hayes, evidence collections complete." Bronco impounded. Survivor en route to hospital. The dispatch voice was businesslike, unaware of the hollow ache beneath my uniform. I pressed the mic off and looked across at the survivor being lifted onto a stretcher, eyes fluttering shut. She drifted away, unconscious, safe for now. Milton stood, dusted off his uniform pants, and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did good work tonight," he said quietly. I nodded, but the words felt distant. "It's enough?" I murmured. He met my gaze, his blue eyes steady. "Sometimes it has to be." I followed him back to the cruiser, boots clicking on gravel, the steady rhythm a reminder that we moved forward because we had to. As I climbed into the passenger seat, I pressed my palm to the cold glass and stared into the fields beyond, where the corn rattled softly like dry bones in a crypt. Somewhere in that darkness, the killer was watching, waiting. And I knew he wouldn't stop until he delivered his final masterpiece. We rolled up the roadblock, the convoy moving in concert once more. The periphery was sealed, the Bronco's taillights fading into black. But I felt the weight of every mile ahead, every lonely highway, every midnight shift yet to come. Because no matter how many times we cornered him, no matter how many victims we reclaimed, he'd continue to haunt the spaces we thought we controlled. As Lancaster 35 followed Milton's cruiser back toward headquarters, I tapped the dashboard, sending a silent message. The hunt was far from over, and I would follow him into whatever darkness he chose. Into every ravine, every track of torn mud, every symbol etched into wood, until the circle was complete, until the line bisected no more lives. The night closed around us, and I listened for the whisper of his next move, ready to chase that ghost lamp into the black. I pressed my forehead against the cruiser's steering wheel as the city lights of Lincoln blurred into the windshield. Behind me, Milton's SUV receded like a dark silhouette, its emergency lights fading. The survivor's statement had been preliminary, a breathless recital of fear, but it contained enough fragments to point us back toward the killer's pattern. I keyed my mic. Hayes to HQ. I have a sit rep. The dispatcher's voice crackled with brittle calm. Go ahead, Hayes. I exhaled, closing my eyes. Survivors stable. Evidence collected at the ravine. Duffel bag, clothing, symbol etched in fence post. I paused, running a hand through my hair, still damp with sweat despite the freezing night. She described him dragging a second body through those same cornrows, but we didn't find a corpse, just footprints and blood spatter that lead toward the old Miller farm. There was a moment's hesitation on the other end. Miller Farm? That's off limits. Private property. You need a warrant. I felt my jaw tighten. Understood, but if he's there now, we'll lose our only chance to stop him from killing again. Copy that. Dispatch is patching you through to county attorney. Stand by. I killed the radio and met Milton at the windshield's edge. He was watching me in the spotlight. Your call? I forced calm. I'm getting a warrant. We go in full team. SWAT, forensics, everyone. He nodded curtly. Let's get moving. By 4 to 12 a.m., the wet, drizzling rain had turned the gravel road to mud. The Miller farm lay 3 miles north, its land bisected by a narrow creek and dotted with collapsed barns. Through the haze, the farmhouse's silhouette looked like a discarded ruin. The windows were dark holes, the porch sagging. We approached in convoy, my cruiser, Milton's SUV, 2 unmarked forensics vans, and a SWAT truck carrying 4 officers in gear. At the edge of the property, militiamen had assembled with the county attorney and a judge on a handheld video call. Flashing badges and the authority of the warrant cleared any hesitation from the farmer's wife, who emerged in a soaked nightgown, tears carving tracks through her pancake makeup. Her name was Marlene Miller. She pointed at the cornfield beyond the creek. He dragged her through there, she whispered, voice trembling. I heard something dragging, like furniture, around 2 this morning. My adrenaline spiked. I exchanged a look with Milton. There was no time to lose. We crossed the muddy creek on a rickety wooden plank. Each step sent splashes up my pant legs. The SWAT team fanned out in a diamond formation, rifles up, flashlights piercing the mist. Forensics technicians followed, camera crews at the ready, and behind us the county attorney murmured legalese into his phone. We reached the fence line where I'd first found the survivor, now marked by crime scene tape. Beyond it, the cornstalks stood brittle and yellow, their tops rattling in the wind. The smell of wet earth and decaying leaves hung heavy. I could still see my own footprints from hours earlier. My heart pounded as I took the lead, pressing into the field's dark throat. Check for booby traps, Milton ordered. I signaled the text to stay back and moved forward, scanning the ground for tripwires or nails. There was nothing until I reached a fresh patch of churned mud, broad, flat boot prints, mixed with smaller, more ragged impressions. I crouched, tracing them with a gloved finger. They led in a slow curve toward the battered shed that loomed at the field's center. Rain began falling harder, beads pattering against my helmet. The roof of the shed sagged so low that 2 of the SWAT officers had to stoop to enter. Their silhouettes vanished inside, rifles sweeping the beam across rotten support beams and broken crates. The air inside was stifling, thick with the musk of mold. Then a scream cut through the night, a woman's voice raw with terror. I bolted forward, drawing my pistol as I sprinted toward the shed's open doorway. The SWAT team flung themselves into formation at its threshold. One officer raised a hand to signal me inside. Inside, under a flickering lantern, lay the second body. A man in his early 40s, wrists and ankles bound, head bowed, hair matted with rain. He wore a light blue dress shirt stained with soil. Backlit by dripping water from the roof's holes, he looked like a rag doll. Blood streaked the floorboards beneath him. trailing back to a corner where a stack of crates formed a crude barricade. The lantern flickered out, plunging us into darkness. My flashlight clicked on, illuminating the killer's signature. That unequal circle and line scrawled in black paint across the far wall, surrounded by a ring of red handprints. They dripped in fresh rivulets, glistening under my beam. My stomach lurched. The scream came again, this time from behind me. I spun, gun raised. There, in the back of the shed, crouched a woman clutching a duffel bag identical to the others. Her face was pale, eyes wild with fear. She tried to scramble away, but her leg snagged on a loose board. I commanded, "Don't move." She froze, and I holstered my weapon. "I'm Deputy Hayes. We're here to help." She blinked, tears streaming. He's gone to get them. They're Milton stepped in, supporting her as she slumped. "She's hypothermic. Get her out." As medics carried her from the shed, I approached the first victim. He was still breathing, shallow and labored, but alive. His lashes fluttered as I stroked his hair back. His eyes opened, full of confusion. "Sir," I began. He tried to speak but only wheezed. Milton intercepted. "We need to clear this place." Outside, the rain fell in sheets. The farmer's wife wept softly under an umbrella held by a deputy. Reporters and onlookers clustered around the police tape, cameras flashing. But inside that shed, time slowed to the drip of leaking water and the woman's ragged breaths on the stretcher. I stepped onto the porch of the farmhouse, slipping on the wet boards. The metal sign by the door twisted on its hinge, creaking. I stared at the faded paint. Miller Family Farm. A deep ache lodged in my chest. This place, once a home, had become a gallery of terror. Moments later, the county attorney approached, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Warrant extension approved," he said, voice low. "We'll comb the property thoroughly, but the public will want answers, and fast." I nodded curtly. "We'll start by processing the symbol and the handprints, then we track the victim's last known routes." He scribbled notes in his leather binder and walked off. I turned back to the field, where the corn now swayed like silent sentinels. Somewhere beneath those stalks, the killer had laid traps, selected victims, and modeled his twisted judgments. But for the first time, we'd interrupted his cycle. 2 survivors, 2 burlap-coated duffels, 4 bodies recovered before the final act. My phone buzzed. It was the lab. DNA from the first duffel bag's fibers matched a 4th victim, one previously unidentified, and indicated a new victim profile. Corporate consultants traveling alone at night. The realization hit me like a blow. We were only halfway through his list. I checked my watch. 5:47 a.m. Dawn would break soon, but the sun wouldn't chase away the darkness that clung here. I closed my eyes and pictured the killer standing somewhere beyond the trees, watching the raid unfold. His symbol, half circle, half line, that mark of imbalance was still fresh in his mind. He'd adapt. He'd escalate. Lightning cracked in the distance, illuminating the farmhouse in stark relief. The thunder rolled, shaking the ground beneath my boots. I turned to Milton, rain dripping from my cap onto my collar. "This isn't over. We've got to anticipate his next move." He met my gaze, rain tracing rivulets down the brim of his hat. "We will. We have to." I nodded, steeling myself against the storm. The ground here was drenched with blood and fear, but it was also soaked with our resolve. We'd exposed his lair, rescued 2 innocents, and reclaimed half the proof we needed to stop him. But as the dawn light struggled to pierce the rain-black sky, I knew the real hunt was only beginning. The line between safety and annihilation in this twisted game was razor thin, and every second counted. I picked up my flashlight and marched back into the cornfield toward the farmhouse, determined to follow his trail wherever it led, through every soaked acre, every shattered barn, every unholy marker, until I finally cornered the ghost lamp and ended his grim spectacle. By the time we'd processed the Miller farm, rain had turned to sleet, pattering against my helmet and freezing to my sleeves in translucent spikes. I watched Milton and Castillo confer with the crime scene techs beneath the sagging porch of the farmhouse, their breath fogging in the harsh glare of floodlights. The survivor and the second rescued victim were loaded into the coroner's van, draped in blankets and murmuring their thanks through chattering teeth. I stepped back into the cornfield's edge, where muddy footprints and broken stalks formed a jagged trail that cut through the dark rows like an open wound. I closed my eyes for a moment, thumb brushing the cold steel of my holstered service weapon. In 10 years of night shifts, I had rushed into blazing buildings, waded through flooded basements, and negotiated with desperate people at gunpoint, and none of it had felt as raw as this. Out here, beneath the whispering stalks, I realized that our killer preyed on more than isolated drivers. He targeted our faith in safety itself, dragging his victims through fields we thought empty, channeling every silent shiver of the dark into dread. I turned my flashlight on and followed the trail deeper, careful not to disturb any broken evidence. Each step revealed new signs of his passage: the twisted metal of a broken rake handle, a smear of dark fluid on the fence's corner post, scuffed footprints that narrowed as they climbed onto a low embankment by the creek. At the top was a tangle of reeds and mud that sloped down toward water. I crouched, shining my beam on a set of prints that led into the shallow flow, waterlogged, smeared as though someone had dragged a canvas tarp in. My heart lodged in my throat. It could be the killer's footprints or the dragged body's weight. Either way, it meant the creek had been part of his staging area long before we arrived. A crackle on my radio jolted me back. "Hayes, come in?" It was Castillo. I tapped the mic. "Go." Tex found something inside the second shed, a satchel with paperwork. Looks like invoices and receipts dated this month. Our victim was forced to sign off on some documents. I shot a glance toward the farmhouse, where reporters' cameras glared at the yellow tape. "Can you secure and photograph them?" "Already doing it. We've got jurisdiction to collect evidence from personal effects now." I exhaled. "Copy. Bring them out." I rose and cut through the next set of corn rows, boots sinking in the wet earth. The wind bit my face. I replayed what Castillo said. Invoices and receipts. He meant the killer had forced someone to legitimize transactions. Another layer of his ritual. First, torture and death. Next, bureaucratic humiliation. Every new revelation made the pattern more grotesque. I met Castillo by the shed's open doorway. He held a leather-bound folder under his arm, the plastic sleeves inside reflecting the flashlight beams. Bank documents, authorization forms, some signed in blood-smudged ink, he said. He's staging a mock trial of sorts, forcing victims to sanction their own demise before he kills them. My stomach churned. The psychological cruelty was spiraling. I flipped on my torch, illuminating the damp pages. The forms were mundane, like a routine work order or expense reimbursement, but splashed with dark blotches. Each signature was by a different victim. Martin Ortiz, Richard Brandt, Denise Caldwell, and now one more we hadn't identified until now. I squinted at the name. Allison Mercer, Senior Consultant, Greystone Financial. I'd never heard of her, but the title fit the pattern: professional men, and now women, traveling alone. I snapped photos while Castillo jotted notes. We moved back to the creek embankment, where the prints faded beneath the rushing water. I knelt again, dipping a gloved finger into the icy current. It stung, numb and sharp. "He's been here more than once," I said. "This creek, he used it both to conceal bodies and as a staging ground for the ritual. He tests our response, then escalates." Before I could continue, my flashlight flickered as someone bumped into me. I spun, gun drawn, but it was Milton, his face lit by the red glow of his radio. "We've got a lead," he said, voice low. "Sheriff's office detective in Omaha just called. They found another truck, same MO, an hour ago, north on I-29. Abandoned flatbed, driver missing, silent alarm tripped." I swallowed hard. "Dead driver?" Milton shook his head. "No body yet. They're securing the scene, but it follows his route." My chest tightened. The killer's territory spanned multiple counties now. He'd stalked our highways on nights we'd never patrol, struck under the noses of other agencies, left us clues in every jurisdiction. "We need to move," I said. "If his path still points north, the next stop could be Harlan County or South Sioux City. He's baiting us." Milton tapped his jaw. "I'll call in mutual aid, SWAT teams from Omaha and Sioux City on standby." I nodded. "We'll hit Harlan County first. That's our best shot." We moved back to the convoy, my flashlight catching the battered scarecrow the farmer had set up at the field's edge. Its ragged coat flapped like a specter in the sleet. I paused and stared at it, imagining the killer using that scarecrow as a backdrop for his next tableau. The notion made bile rise in my throat. We tore away from the farm's gate in 3 vehicles, lights dancing across the cornfield one last time before the sleet swallowed the view. As we sped down the muddy lane, I caught the glare of a camera flash from a nearby reporter who'd slipped the line. I pressed my seatbelt tighter, signaling Milton to stay silent. We passed under the farmhouse's sagging porch light, then into the black of the rural highway. My mind ran through the timeline. The feed mill pickup, the Silver Lantern Diner, the stranded van, the auto mall, the Miller farm, and now this flatbed north of the Missouri. 7 bodies already discovered, 2 survivors. 4 young men, 3 older professionals, and a consultant woman. DOJ profilers had hypothesized his motive: resentment toward perceived privilege, the allure of absolute control. But now I sensed something deeper. He was at war with our institutions, law enforcement, commerce, routine life, and each victim represented a node in that system. Torture was his sermon. Bodies left in plain sight were his pulpit. Milton broke the silence. "You okay back there?" I blew out a breath. "I am, more determined than ever." He glanced at me. "We'll catch him." I turned toward the dark fields beyond the highway, snow-damp stalks shuddering in the sleet. "We have to," I said. "He's out there right now, planning the next scene, marking the roads with his code, and if we don't stop him, more people will die in silence, under storm-black skies where no one can hear their screams." Milton gave me a firm nod. "Then let's move. Harlan County's 50 miles west. We'll get there in time." I reholstered my weapon and leaned back. The radio squawked updates from Omaha, Sioux City, and Lincoln. Mutual aid teams were mobilizing. The news helicopters were already climbing into the sky. I flicked my lights off and on to signal the cars behind. "All units, approach Harlan County under operational silence. Eyes on the roads, no stops without protocol." The convoy fell into formation, headlights serrating the black ahead. I set the cruise control at 35. Fast enough to close the gap, slow enough to spot movement at the roadside. In the glow of the dashboard, I studied the symbol etched on my palm, the bisected circle that kept reappearing in every scene. I could feel its meaning shifting, evolving, like the killer's psychosis was living and breathing through it. A low rumble echoed behind us. Wind or distant thunder, I couldn't tell. The road stretched on, one straight line etched into the darkness. I envisioned the flatbed's canvas flap snapping in the wind, the shape of a body underneath, the hush of a half-empty highway. I whispered to the empty passenger seat, "Not tonight." The sleet intensified, plastering itself across my windshield. I flicked the wipers back and forth, but the glass fogged and cleared in violent pulses, as though the road itself was alive. I tapped the brakes twice, a coded reminder to the other cars, and slowed to 25. The convoy clustered, lights dimmed, each cruiser's silhouette blending into the murk. My breath steamed inside the cabin, and for a fleeting moment I was back in that trailer on Highway 34, unzipping that duffel bag and staring into frozen eyes. Only now, I was unzipping the killer's intentions, piece by piece, digging through his paperwork, mapping his route, unraveling his codes. Each discovery felt like a step closer, and also a step deeper into his labyrinth. I straightened in the seat, palms gripping the wheel. Ahead, a dim glow marked the crossroads of County Road 4 and Highway 77, our entry point into Harlan County territory. The map we'd pieced together from receipts and routes placed the flatbed just beyond that intersection. I inhaled, tasting the sleet on my tongue. "Haze to all units," I began, voice low and firm. "We're imminent on Harlan County. Maintain formation. Prepare for a coordinated approach at mile marker 12. Expect to engage." Static crackled in response. The convoy headlights converged on the intersection, cutting through the sleet in an arrow of blue and red. In that moment I felt the shift. The hunter had become the hunted. The circle and line in my palm burned like a brand. As we crossed into Harlan County's jurisdiction, the world outside fell silent. No radio chatter, no engine whine, only the relentless hiss of ice on pavement. My focus narrowed to the road, to the next turn, to the next heartbeat. Somewhere ahead, on that rain-slick asphalt, the killer waited. An echo in the thunder, a ripple in the dark. And I braced myself for the collision that would end this chase, or cost us everything. The intersection glowed like a beacon in the sleet-slick night, our convoy's lights converging on the damp asphalt as we rolled into Harlan County. My chest rattled with adrenaline, each breath a tight hiss beneath the storm's roar. Sergeant Milton's SUV fell into position beside my cruiser. Castillo and Nguyen fanned out behind us, weapons at the ready. Ahead, under the dull halo of the single street lamp, I made out the flatbed's silhouette, its canvas tarp flapping against the rain like the wings of a wounded bird. I flicked on my spotlight, sweeping its beam across the truck's side. The rear wheels rested in a shallow ditch, the face of the canvas taut and stained. No driver stood beside it, no footprints led away. The hush was uncanny. Even the sleet felt hesitant here. I radioed in terse commands. Team 1, secure the perimeter. Team 2, approach from the east, watch for booby traps. SWAT, hold at the curb. My voice was steady, but I could taste the electricity in my mouth. Sour, metallic, like copper pennies dissolved in sweat. I stepped from the cruiser, boots skidding on the wet pavement. The wind snapped the collar of my coat up around my neck, and I shoveled my flashlight forward, beam cutting a path along the tarp's edge. The tag numbers had been filed off, of course. The registration was fake, but I recognized the make of the truck, a 1997 Peterbilt flatbed, common enough, unremarkable, and I knew that within its frame lay the next horror. Memories flashed unbidden. The trailer on Highway 34, the diner booth, the van on Interstate 80, the feed mill's duffel, the Miller Farms shed. All had been preludes to deeper darkness. Guyen approached from the east, her flashlight squared low. "Hayes," she hissed under her breath. "I'm not seeing any tripwires, but I am seeing footprints leading to the driver's door." I ducked under the beam and crouched, gauging the shallow tread. They were fresh, no deeper than an inch, shallow depressions in the wet gravel. The footprints traced a lazy arc that ended at the rear axle. But then, an odd detail. The prints narrowed unexpectedly, as though the killer had removed one boot, maybe to move silently through mud, or to leave a false trail. His cunning never ceased to terrify me. Milton jogged over, rain plastering his cap to his forehead. He studied the prints, then the tarp's grommets. "It's got to be in the cargo bed," he said. "Let's pop that tarp." I reached for my multi-tool and released the snap locks one by one, the steel clicking against cold plastic. The tarp rolled back with a wet slap, and my light revealed stacked wooden crates, pale pine boxes bound by nylon straps, each labeled with dates and shipping codes that meant nothing to civilians but told me everything. Destination Cedar Rapids, origin Omaha. Each crate addressed to Department of Transportation. Beneath them lay another duffel bag, identical to the ones before. Slate gray canvas stained with rust-colored smears. I nodded to Nguyen. She hooked the bag's zipper with gloved fingers and yanked. The bag split open, hinges of metal teeth sagging. Inside, folded against the bag's wall, rested a bundle of clothing. This time, a woman's trench coat, black as the sky. Beneath it, I caught the flash of polished leather. Before I could lean further in, Castillo's flashlight swept past my shoulder, illuminating steel cuffs clasped around the opposite edge of the bed. I straightened and signaled Castillo forward. He retrieved a pair of medical gloves from his vest, pulled them on, and lifted the coat aside. The face that met us was pale, eyes closed, but not lifeless. I recognized her at once. Allison Mercer, the consultant from Greystone Financial whose signature had stained those atrocity forms. She lay on a thin sheet of plastic, limbs curled in a fetal position, breathing ragged. Her hair matted with mud, cheeks streaked with tears congealed in grime. My heart clenched. A survivor again, but barely. I rushed forward. "Deputy Hayes, can you hear me?" My voice cracked in my own ears. She blinked, eyelids fluttering sideways. "Officer," she croaked. He said," her words trailed, body shaking in silent sobs. I knelt, scanning her for injuries. No obvious bleeding, but the black and blue bruise around her throat told the story. I dug my radio mic from my pocket. "Hayes to medics. Female victim found in flatbed. Possible hypothermia and asphyxiation trauma. ETA 2 minutes?" "Copy," came the reply. I turned back to her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now," I murmured. "We're getting you out of here." She nodded, then twisted her head to glance beyond the flatbed, eyes landing on the far ditch, where the road dipped between two cornfields. Her mouth moved, lips forming words I barely heard. "It's him. He's back there." I followed her gaze. The ditch's curve, the way the corn stalks receded beneath the drop. There, something shifted. A flash of coat against stalks, a taut line of movement. My pulse jumped. I spun, pistol drawn, sweeping the beam across the field's edge. The stalks rattled. A shape ducked behind them, then emerged, crouched low in the furrows. It was him, lean frame draped in a worn tan overcoat, the hood pulled up, muddy boots glinting. In his hand gleamed the glint of metal. "Get her secure," I barked, voice raw. Milton was already moving. Castillo covered us, weapons raised. I emptied my magazine, then swept my hand into the pouches for a fresh clip. But the shape in the field had vanished. No low growl of footsteps, no tearing of stalks, simply the hush of cornstalks swaying once. My radio crackled. "We're at your 6, Hayes. Back up in 2 minutes." I clipped in the fresh ammo and squeezed out, jacking the slide. My chest heaved as I scanned the field with my light. The killer had always manipulated our response, mocked our urgency. Now he teased with a fleeting silhouette, daring us to follow, and cunningly drawing our focus away from the flatbed's rear. I holstered my weapon with a trembling hand, then snagged a roll of crime scene tape and sealed the area around the truck. Hands shaking, I snapped photos of the symbol, a circle bisected by line, painted in black across the back of the tailgate. It was larger here, more confident in its arcs, the line drawn through the circle's center with heavy pressure. Below it, blood stains had pooled at the hinges. I slid my gloved finger through the viscous drop, still warm. He'd only just left. Behind me, Allison Mercer was lifted onto a stretcher. She squeezed my hand as they passed, words of thanks mixed with trembling fear. I turned back to the field, flashlight in one hand, camera in the other, and surveyed the rows. The killer had known his own retreat path better than any of us. Corn plants bent aside in neat arcs toward a shallow mound of dirt, an old drainage culvert. His escape route. If we followed it, we'd be stepping into his trap. I swallowed, voice low in the radio. "All units, code red. Suspect sighted in Northfield. Do not approach until SWAT containment is in place." The response was immediate. Confirmation, forklift of sirens approaching, boots clattering on asphalt as the team rushed into position. I motioned to Milton. "Hold position at the flatbed. Don't let him circle back." He nodded, eyes grim. Sirens faded into the distance, swallowed by the storm. The night felt thicker now, as if the air itself resisted our pursuit. I exhaled, smearing frost from my breath across the lens of my camera. Then I stepped off the pavement and onto the field's edge, boots crunching through damp stalks, flashlight beam chiseling through the darkness. Each step felt fraught, like wading into the unknown heart of a beast. The culvert's edge rose up like a low ledge. Roots and weeds tangled around its rim. I knelt to peer inside. Nothing but swirling water, leaf litter, and the faint echo of wind beyond. I leaned in further. A sharp click, steel on metal, echoed in the culvert's throat. I jerked back, heart in my throat, torch beam bouncing. There, wedged against a pipe, gleamed the edge of a plank, or perhaps a trap door hinged into the culvert's side. "Milton," I whispered into the radio. "Suspect may be using an underground tunnel beneath the culvert. There's something sealed in there." My words felt unreal. An access point covert and deliberate, constructed as part of his theater. I turned and caught movement at my periphery. A slow, deliberate lift of a foot, black boot moving from shadow into torchlight. He stood at the edge of the culvert, hood dropped back, face half lit by my beam. His eyes met mine, cold, distant, triumph flashing in their depths. In his hand, he held the reigning trophy of his rise, a bloody duffel strap looped around his wrist like a talisman. Time slowed. Everything else retreated. The sleet's patter, the distant wail of sirens, the vault of night sky. It was only him and me, eyes locked across the ditch. His lips curled in a faint mocking smile. Then he raised the strap and let it fall, a mere gesture, but full of meaning. He'd toyed with us, herded us onto his ground. The rest was for him to choose. With a sudden flurry, he slipped down the culvert, disappearing into its yawning darkness. My flashlight beam followed. illuminating the tunnel's wet walls and the jagged outline of a doorway. A faint echo, metal scraping wood, whispered from within. I barked, "Milton, teams hold! We've got movement underground!" Before the response crackled through, I dropped into the culvert's mouth, weapon raised, light, keening ahead of me. The tunnel was narrow, soaked, smell of rot and damp earth filling my nostrils. Footsteps ahead echoed in vanishing metallic doodles. I pressed forward, jacket snagging on low beams, the water sloshing over my boots. Then the passage opened into a wider chamber, the underside of an abandoned service station, concrete pillars stretching overhead like ribs. A single bare bulb hung from rusted wires, flickering, illuminating crates stacked in a semicircle. Blood smeared the walls in spidery streaks that led toward a center slab of pouring concrete. The floor was a mosaic of footprints. Our pursuit, his retreat, a dance of predator and prey. And there, strapped to the slab, was something I could barely process. Two figures, ragged, bound back to back, flesh pale under the bulb's sputter. Their breaths were shallow, alive, but fading. Before I could move, the slab's surface shimmered as the bulb caught something on the far wall, the largest iteration yet of his icon, circle and line, painted in dripping crimson across cracked concrete, the line forming a noose that encircled the victims. My radio died in my ear, likely sheared by the tunnel's steel beams. The sluice of air came as a final exclamation. I heard his voice, low and distant, echoing off the concrete. "You thought you knew the pattern, deputy, but I write the rules." He stepped from shadow onto the slab's edge, face inches from mine. His breath reeked of antiseptic and soil. In his other hand he held a surgical scalpel. I pressed mine against mine, heart hammering like a war drum. "This is the end," he whispered, and the world shifted. Rubble at my feet, floodlights above, the scream of distant sirens cut short by the tunnel's roar. Then the bulb exploded in a flash of sparks, plunging us into black. The only thing I felt was his weight shifting. The tug of rope against concrete, the scrape of metal as he slipped free. And then silence. Absolute, choking. My flashlight flickered once and died. I was alone, deaf to everything but my own ragged breathing. The distant thunder of pursuit above the manhole cover I'd entered. I reached for my radio, nothing. My sidearm slide cocked heavy in my gloved hand. I tapped out a circle in the air with trembling fingers. The line bisected it, leaving half in light, half in black. And as I knelt there, the tunnel echoing with the impossibility of his escape, I realized the final act had begun, and I was trapped within its walls, at the mercy of the man who had turned our trust into his masterpiece. My hand hovered over the manhole's rim. I knew the storm raged above, rescue teams combing the fields. But I also knew he'd written this chapter in blood and flourished one last time in the darkness. I whispered to the walls, to the stalled machinery, to the bound figures who clung to life, "You won't break me." But the only answer was the drip of water from the ceiling and the echo of his promise. The line between order and chaos is thinner than you think. And tonight, I draw it myself. Lights glimmered at the tunnel's mouth. I stood, pressed the flashlight against my chest, and stepped forward into the black.